yet help me preach on a Friday night. And I know this is my first time here, and I'm the youngest here, so you may not believe me, but when you look at Jesus' life in totality, his birth was celebrated by angels, but yet he was born in a borrowed manger on the backside of a mountain. Baptized in glory, the angels rejoiced in heaven. God said, "This is my son who I am well pleased." Yet he's ushered into the wilderness to be tempted by Satan. Raised the dead, healed the sick, yet rejected by his friend, betrayed by another. Comes into Jerusalem, showered by the shouts of Hosanna, Hosanna. Only a few days later to hear those same lips shout, "Crucify him, crucify him." It's a life filled with ups and downs. And if we be honest, on a Friday night, we can testify that we all live a life filled with both ups and downs, trials and tribulations, good days and bad days, celebration and challenges. Hand me that, Tim. Celebration and challenges. But Jesus teaches us a lesson that no matter how many ups I experience in my life, no matter how many downs I experience in my life, that when it's all said and done, there's no better place to be than in thy Father's hands. He says there's no better place to be than in thy Father's hands, because we have to understand that these are not just any hands. These are the same hands that formed heaven, the same hands that wrote the law and handed it to Moses, the same hands that are strong enough to hold the world but still gentle enough to wipe tears from your eyes, hands that can hope, hands that can help, hands that can provide, hands that can protect, hands that can guard, hands that can guide. These are the Father's hands. And I don't know about you, but when it's all said and done, and I've experienced the highs of life, when it's all said and done, I've experienced the lows of life, I just want to echo the words of Jesus: God, into thy hands I commend my spirit. But the good news is that Jesus he says that into thy hands I commend my spirit, but it doesn't have to just stop there, because the good news is that anything that you have going on today, you can commend it into his hands. I'm reminded of when I was in Sunday school, and I was a little bitty boy, and we would sing a song called "It's in His Hands." And I would like it when we would get around to the end, because the teacher would point at different boys and girls, and she would allow them an opportunity to say something, and it didn't matter what they said, the rest of the class would respond and say, "It's in his hands." Now, me being a babe in Christ at the time, I was astonished, and I asked myself, how in the world does the teacher know exactly what we are going to say to be able for us to say that it's in his hands? But as I began to grow up, and as I began to go through my own trials and tribulations of life, as I began to go through my own challenges of life, I began to realize that the teacher didn't necessarily know what we was going to say, but the teacher said that it don't matter what you said, because everything is in his hands. And I just stopped by to tell you, as I'm on the way to my seat, that everything you need is in the Father's hands. It's joy in his hands. There's peace in his hands. There's love in his hands. And whatever it is that you got, you can do just like Jesus and commend it into his hands. So tonight, I'm just going to point, and you commend whatever it is you need into thy Father's hands. Into thy hands, I commend my mind. Into thy hands, I commend my spirit. Into thy hands, I commend my pain. Into thy hands, I commend my children. Into thy hands, I commend my relationship. Into thy hands, I commend my job. Into thy hands, I commend my finances. Into Into thy hands I commend the bad doctor's report. Into thy hands I commend my friends. Into thy hands I commend my family. Into thy hands I commit it all, because there's no better place to be than in thy Father's hands.